Piyush Melody Boy says, does Russia really love India, or is it just posing because they need allies and a big market to sell things to in this Ukraine war? So, listen, if we look at, see, we have to examine history from a certain perspective. So, when we take photographs, in case some of you are into photography, you will know that you, for a certain camera, you have a whole variety of lenses you can buy, and each lens serves a certain purpose. You take a subject, you put it in front of you, you take a certain lens with a certain focal length, you will see a certain perspective of the image. You take a different lens, you will see a different perspective. Some lenses make it very flat, some lenses give you a blurred background, and so on. I will not go into that, but that's how it works. Similarly, when you look at history and geopolitics, the what you understand of it depends on the lens that you're using to take a look at it, to look at it. So if you use a very short lens, let's say very short term memory kind of lens, then you will get a certain picture of things. If you take a longer term perspective, a longer lens, then you will see a different perspective. So the question is, does Russia really love India? So if I take a short lens and take a look at what happened in the past 5 or 10 years, I will get a certain perspective. See, uh, and it's a good perspective, it's very instructive. So in 2017, I think, or 20, whichever year it was, 5 6 years ago, 7 years ago perhaps, the Russians were conducting military exercises with Pakistan. It was called the Druzhba exercises. Druzhba means friendship in Russian. So there was Druzhba 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, if I am not mistaken, but there has been no Druzhba 2023. And I think there's been no Druzhba 2022 either, most likely, if I'm not mistaken. So so how come Russia was kind of being friendly with Pakistan, and why is it not happening now? Why have those exercises, those military exercises stopped and all that? So the question is a very good question, and we have to look at it from a long term perspective, because that's when we start seeing the patterns. So Russia in geopolitics, there is no love in geopolitics, all right, and there is no friendship in geopolitics. Geopolitics is all about self interest, it's all about your narrow national interest. And when you have two nations whose national interests align and converge, it is natural for them to work together. And when you have two nations whose national interests clash, then they simply can't work together. So, how do you know whether two nations will have an alignment of national interests or a clash of national interests? One of the best ways of understanding that is just to take a look at the map. So, let me show you the map, which will give us an idea of what is the situation. So, let's take a look at the map. Here's the map. So, as we can see, India and China have a significant long shared border, because we allowed China to conquer Tibet and occupy Tibet in 1950. Our great Prime Minister, the great magnificent Mr. Nehru, did that. So India and China have a long undemarcated border, which makes India and China, it makes it impossible for India and China to be allies. When two large nations have a shared border, common border, it means that they can never be allies, and they will always have some kind of tension and some kind of hostility. Similarly, the Russians and the Chinese have a long border, which tells you that the Russians and the Chinese are also not natural allies, they're natural adversaries. Now, India and Russia don't have a shared border. India and Russia both want a stable and secure Central Asia. India and Russia both see China as an adversary for very good reason. I mean, I'll not go into the history of the Russia China thing, but yeah, it's there. So, from these perspectives, if you look at all of this from the big picture perspective, from the long lens of the past 100 years, then you will see that Russia and India are actually natural allies. We will not use the term ally, okay, but it's kind of like that. It's kind of like a de facto unwritten alliance kind of thing in certain ways. We try to keep it under wraps, you could say. So there's no love here. Love happens when there is shared blood or shared culture. Okay, that's when love exists. So when it comes to the nations of the Indian subcontinent, yeah, we could actually say that there is love in some sense. I would not say that there is love between India and Pakistan, but clearly one could have an affectionate perspective from India's perspective towards Nepal or Sri Lanka or Bhutan or Myanmar. And well, if the other nations behave, we will be affectionate towards them as well. So love only exists when you have shared blood or shared culture. When it comes to Russia, we don't have shared blood and we don't have shared culture either. But we have a strong convergence of national interests. So Russia does feel the pressure right now because of the Ukraine war. Obviously, it feels the pressure, and it does need allies. It does need a huge market for selling oil because that is what relieves the pressure from Russia. So yes, it does need that. For that, from that perspective, India is something they really need. So yeah, it's a great thing for them. But it's not like they are playing a short-term game. It's a long-term game, and India and Russia are going to be aligned for the long term, for this entire century. One could imagine, if not more. So that's the deal. There's no love. There's no love in geopolitics. There are alliances, and alliances typically are temporary.